Hi, this is Marty.
Good morning, Marty. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
I'm doing good. We're not recording yet, so don't worry. We're not on the air.
Okay.
So
All right.
you just act totally normal. Everyone's good.
Normal? How's that going to happen? I don't know about that.
So let me introduce myself. My name is Travis Holmes. I do the show with Mike Stine, as you know.
Right.
And the way we can... Sure thing.
Yep.
Are you ready?
Ready?
My thing's not doing its job over here, so I don't know. I'm going to have to... Stupid imported printers. Okay. Mike, you ready?
Yep.
Now for something special. The unit is self-contained with its own saddler, farrier, wheelwright and so on. It's a rigorous training dished out who know all there is to know about horses, and it brings results.
We take you behind the scenes now to show just some of the interesting aspects of this training.
Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine, the best podcast to create sounder horses from the ground up. Mike Stine is a registered journeyman farrier with an APF1 accreditation. On this week's show, we have very special guest, Dr. Marty Adams, an equine nutritionist, and he's going to talk about recognizing the management of metabolic conditions, feeding horses for performance on any levels, and what are amino acid supplements, and when to consider giving them to a horse. All this and much, much more will be discussed here on Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. And over my far right side is Mike Stine. How are you?
I'm doing good, Travis. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I had my morning coffee, and unfortunately, when you don't eat on top of coffee, your mouth kind of does a double take on any words that you might say.
Okay, we'll blame it on the coffee then.
Blame it on the coffee. So my question to you, Mike, what's been going on with you?
Well, it's been kind of a busy week. Was out of town a couple days. Back here, Doc Redden up in Kentucky that does all the work with podiatry. He got called in on a consult with a laminitic horse. So on fairly short notice, we got caught up in the Doc Redden whirlwind because some of these things you have to move on pretty quick. So Tuesday night, I went out and put a set of Redden Ultimates on a horse, temporarily bandaged him on.
Now, when you say you went out, did you go to
The farm.
in Virginia?
No.
I'm sorry.
The farm down here. Someone here
I stand
sent
corrected.
him x-rays. Because of what was going on, he asked for vinograms. We brought in Dr. Sean from down in Aiken, South Carolina, he is also a root and riddle podiatry veterinarian, to shoot x-rays. And we got Dr. T sitting over here for backup. So, and then Friday night, per Dr. Redden, we adjusted a few things, break over, and where the horse was setting a couple degrees in the ultimates. And I think there's getting ready to be in about a week of follow-up on that vinogram because it was not exactly where we wanted it to be.
Now, how old was this horse that you were working on?
It's a mature horse. I'm not sure, honestly. It is a mature horse. I'm going to guess 12, but it's a guess.
Okay.
I didn't ask him and didn't look in his mouth.
So has this something, I assume this is something that is because of lack of blank.
Lack of exercise. He's heavier than he should be. I don't know what all went on. I'm not going to get into some of the discussion on that. There are definitely some alignment problems. There were probably some issues with what was being done by farriers. And, sometimes it's hard working blind and getting where you need to be, meaning blind, you're working without x-rays.
Now, is this a pasture pony or is this a working horse?
No, this is a very nice imported warm blood.
But is this horse being ridden for like dressage or 100 jumpers or eventing or anything?
Well, right
like
now he's hanging out in he's got a nice cushy stall.
Maybe he planned that.
He worked
Maybe
it
if
out
I
pretty
eat
good.
a whole lot, I don't have to do anything and just sit in the stall and relax and enjoy this nice weather.
But his job was to be a dressage horse, big, beautiful horse. Nice guy, easy to work around.
Mm-hmm.
We got some sore feet, and we got to deal with it.
So you say in a couple of weeks, you got to go back and update and everything?
Well,
He's good for now.
He's good for the moment, set and tight. We're waiting for Sean to schedule coming in on the follow-up vinograms because some of the blood flow did not open up like Doc Redden wanted it to. Mm-hmm. And we got to see what's happening there. and then we'll either hold steady or make some decisions at that point.
Now, did you say anything to the trainer or owner in Barrow saying, hey, this might have not happened. Here's some preventatives. Basically, thin your horse down a little bit, not feed them as much grain or whatever that you're feeding them. Let them get them off the pastures, get them off the hay or something like that. Or did you just go, hey, this is your horse, feed your little fat baby, whatever you want to do, but this is going to continue?
Well, I do say something quite regular. I was not involved in this case until after Doc Redden was involved.
Right.
And it's okay. We need to do something now, get some mechanics on that foot, get the pressure off, get the support in place, and start working on getting this guy out of trouble. And we don't need to play around and wait on it. So it's like move when it's time to move.
Right. But you didn't say anything about that.
Well, I hadn't seen this horse before I rolled in the barn to put the ultimates on it.
Oh, okay.
But he's carrying some extra weight.
Is Doc Redding the type of person that would say, hey, look, this is what we've done for your horse for now. What you need to do on your end, we've done everything on our end that we can do for the horse. And, of course, we'll follow up. Is he the type of doctor that say, like if I was to go into my doctor's office and he said, hey, your blood pressure's high, lay off the Twinkies there, fatso,
Well, I'll bring you some Twinkies. I don't care.
No, I don't need any Twinkies. There's a reason why I didn't eat breakfast this morning. But I mean, is he the type of person that would say, "Hey, we've done what we can"? And he would,
and you've got to take care of everything in the program, or you're fighting a losing battle. Dr. Sean from Rood and Riddle addressed it with her in depth while he was at the farm. But yes, you definitely got to look at changing your feeding program. I know that he was looking at when he comes back on the follow-up, pulling some blood, check it for metabolic conditions. Insulin resistant, whatever's going on there, and then start addressing the problem.
Well, the great news is that on the phone with us right now, we're going to bring him back next segment. Next segment is Dr. Marty Adams. He's an equine nutritionist, and he'll go through all this as far as what his job does and what he does, and maybe give him some insight as far as if you've got a horse out there that just can't drop the LBs, he can help you with that as well. Stick around. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. We'll be right back. Good?
Yep.
Okay. All right, Dr. Marty, you're not on the air yet, but your microphone's active. So anything you cough, say, or anything like that will be recorded.
Okay.
Did you have any questions or anything that you wanted to add to that little opening?
No, that'll be a great intro to for questions like the metabolic issues and such. Yeah.
I've got some questions too for Dr. Marty.
I bet you do.
All right, let me, I got to bring up his pictures and stuff.
No Twinkies for you.
No Twinkies for me is right. Oh, switch cameras. I got to get we have a video feed as well. And we've got a picture of you in a white shirt and jeans holding looks like a dark colored horse under the chin. That's what the picture we're using on the video. Is that all right?
Okay. Oh, sure.
Okay. It's a marvelous picture, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Of the horse.
Horse, it's all right.
He's got his fancy bridle on with wearing his silver. It's just out to go.
It's just a headshot. He could be, Mike, you ready?
Yep.
Dr. Marty, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. Make sure you follow him on YouTube. We have for every podcast we do, we have a matching video. You can see me waving to Mike, Mike waving to me. And he is also the 2018 American Eventing Championship Farrier. And you can follow him over on Facebook as well. Mike, again, you've been posting a lot of crazy articles up there as far as like hoof placement and all that. So if you want to learn a bit more outside of the podcast, make sure you follow. It's a good follow. That's Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine over on Facebook as well. And over to my far right side is Mike Stine. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
And on the phone with us right now, we have Dr. Marty Adams, an equine nutritionist. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Now, explain exactly what an equine nutritionist is and what's the difference between like a dog nutritionist or a regular small animal nutritionist, or does that all follow under the same umbrella?
It would follow under the same umbrella. What I've done is I've gone to grad school and gotten a master's and PhD in that area of animal science, for equine science and specifically the field of nutrition. There are a lot of people that will consider themselves or be certified possibly as an equine nutritionist by going through professional animal scientist training and so on. But the ultimate would be someone having a PhD in that area. So I work for a feed company called Cargill, and I help with formulation of feeds for horses. I do educational programs for horse owners, for equine veterinarians, for our field salespeople, and I consult a lot of horse owners pretty much on a day-to-day basis. Did that this morning, in fact.
Now, here's the question that I have. Now, all of our listeners out there know that I'm the simpleton of the show. I'm the common guy who basically just pays the bills for the horses. Oh, it needs a new bridle. Here's whatever for a new bridle. It needs hay. Here's money for hay. That's basically the extent of my job here on the property. My wife does all the dressage riding. She does all the showing. She basically does the feed, does the animals, buys all or recommends the products to buy, and then I go out and get them. So my question is, you have dog food. You ready? You see where I'm going here. My dog eats the cat food. The cat eats the dog food. The chickens outside eat the cat food, but not all the cat food, just the little orange pieces in the cat food. So I know there's a protein balance, there's a fatty balance. So what makes horse food better or made for horses as to dog food or cat food? I know it's a simple question, but I don't want to know the basic advantages of it.
Right. So different animals have different requirements. For example, cats have a specific amino acid requirement for taurine, for example, which is a much higher requirement than, say, for dogs. For horses are herbivores, and they have to eat a certain amount of plant matter or fiber for the digestive system work properly. And as Mike has addressed earlier with that horse that had metabolic issues, the insulin resistance or dysregulation we call, we know more and more now that we have issues with horses with regulating the amount of sugar and starch in their diets. And so we want, for the most part, the hay that horse consumes, a minimum amount of hay required per day, and then vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and so on, which we don't know as much about horses as we do for companion animals and so on. But we do know that sugar and starch in their diets plays a huge role in the metabolic issues that they have.
So let's get on to, actually, I know you touched on it a little bit just now, recognizing and managing metabolic conditions. What is it, when you say that, what does that mean to me?
Okay, there's two basic metabolic issues we have with horses. One is known as Equine Metabolic Syndrome, and if you've heard of the term insulin resistance or insulin dysregulation, that would encompass that area. That tends to be in younger horses. The major symptom we see from that is laminitis. There's two main nutritional ways that horses get laminitis. One is elevated levels of blood insulin from elevated levels of blood glucose, which occurs from consuming diets that are higher in sugar and starch, which we refer to in the equine nutrition world as non-structural carbohydrates. So hays, pastures, and grains specifically can be high or low in NSC. And when a horse consumes a certain amount of that, especially if they're genetically insulin resistant or have this equine metabolic syndrome, it also goes along with horses being easy keepers or having a more thrifty metabolism. So as they get overweight, we also see that increase in blood glucose and blood insulin. So that's one way horses get laminitis is with elevated, prolonged levels of blood insulin, which may occur in the example you gave before, where that horse was in work, and then he got out of work. He was overweight. That made this situation even worse, and then he presented with laminitis. Okay, so the insulin is causing that issue. The other metabolic issue we refer to is Cushing's disease, and there's a new acronym called PPID, pituitary pars intermedia dysfunction, which is a fancy name. But again, the major issue for that or symptom is laminitis. So again, we'd want a low sugar starch diet, look at a low NSC grain, maybe hay, avoidance of pasture, which tends to be high NSC, and in both of those situations, reduce the risk of laminitis.
So can a horse ever turn into, I know I had a bulldog many years ago, bulldogs they're very dormant, they sleep all day long, and we were feeding them table scraps. I know, table scraps to a dog are not supposed to do that. Here's a little, you want your little poochie to have some bacon, here's some bacon. It's good. I like it. You like it. Can a horse ever get into diabetes, I guess, for the most part, because of all the starch and the sugars that are getting? Can you physically have to give a horse a diabetic shot, or is that outside of the equine world?
Well, yeah, diabetes, which is the lack of insulin, is very rare in horses. what you usually see is we see the opposite of that in insulin resistance or dysregulation. These horses that are equine metabolic syndrome, they have this really thrifty metabolism, and part of that also is that their insulin levels are higher than normal, and it's probably a mechanism or survival mechanism. If you think about horses that developed in areas where there was not a lot to eat, right? So the idea would be glucose's job is to get into the cell to provide the cell energy. So insulin's job is to, when there's glucose in the bloodstream, to tell the glucose to get into the cell and turn into fat so the horse can survive. Think about the feral horses in New Mexico where there may be grass available only 6 months of the year.
And right here in North Carolina, too. We have the wild horses out there on the Outer Banks.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So they can get nutrition there for maybe 6 months of the year, or very sparingly. That insulin level works at a higher than normal level. And what's happened is over time, that insulin doesn't work like it should. So we get higher and higher levels of insulin accumulating in the blood. And we know from research that high levels of insulin are cause a greater risk or incidence of laminitis. So these horses are at greater risk every day, just genetically. And then we also know when we give them a grain meal, the starch and sugar or the elevation in blood glucose elevates that insulin level even more than in a normal horse. I've got some research to show that elevates it at twice the rate. So again, that's why ponies, bennies, these warm blood sport horses that tend to be easy keepers, metabolically, genetically, have that issue where we see greater incidence of laminitis in these horses.
Mike, are you writing all this down?
I'm a slow writer, but I'm trying.
So I guess it would be the opposite of diabetes, like anti-diabetes. Now, is there a pill? Is there a cure-all other than the normal exercise and watch what you eat? Is there something that we can give the horse to be lazy? I guess us as the human race, we like to be lazy as much as possible. Is there something that we can give the horse if they have that anti-diabetes?
So what we typically do then, you consult with your veterinarian, and your veterinarian would diagnose the horse having this equine metabolic syndrome. They can do a resting blood insulin test where they'll pull blood on the horse and they'll look at the level of insulin. And if that insulin level is higher than normal, they'll diagnose that horse as having equine metabolic syndrome. So what they should do, and a lot of veterinarians have some nutrition training where they would say, okay, we need to put this horse on a diet where we feed less calories. We typically do that with the use of a diet balancer as opposed to grain because it has a lower feeding rate where we can meet all the nutritional requirements, and it is low in sugar and starch. I work for a company called Cargill, so we can also test hay. We do that free of charge for horse owners and for veterinarians. And so we'll look at the sugar starch level of the hay, and we have recommendations for that. We'll limit the hay. We'll provide a diet balancer, so we'll put that horse on a diet, so we'll start losing some weight. That'll reduce the risk of, or the incidence of insulin resistance or dysregulation. And then the veterinarian then, for the case of equine metabolic syndrome, may want to recommend the use of a drug called Thyro L. It's a synthetic thyroid hormone, and I'm sure Mike's aware of that too. So what it does, it increases metabolic rate and allows the horse to decrease weight. They did a study with that at the University of Tennessee over 4 months, where they used Thyro L on horses with a high incidence of laminitis, reduced it by almost 80% with diet and drug use. Okay, with the Cushing's disease issues, what the veterinarian will prescribe is a drug called Presend, and what happens there is that there's high levels of a hormone called ACTH, and it causes high levels of cortisol in the bloodstream of the horse, which causes all kinds of bad things to happen. And so the veterinarian will diagnose that disease, recommend the Presend, and that reduces ACTH levels, which reduce cortisol levels. So the use of the veterinarian, the use of a nutritionist or nutritional guidelines, and then the use of a farrier are all three things we can do to reduce the issues we have with horses with these two types of diseases.
Now, Mike, you notice he didn't say I have to put my horse on one of those water treadmill things, so I don't have to buy that for my horse.
Yes, you do.
No, I don't want Dr. Marty Adams. I don't want you to say that because whatever you say, my wife's going to listen to this podcast and go, maybe that's a good idea. Maybe we should get a horse treadmill. No, we're not doing it. All right, guys. Stick around. When we come back, we're going to talk more to Dr. Marty Adams, and we're going to talk about performance horses and how to feed them as well. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. Stick around. He'll be right back. Dr. Marty, you okay?
Yeah, I'm doing good.
Yeah, sound good too.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah,
I had my coffee this morning.
That's fine. It helps. It helps the blood flowing, and sometimes the thoughts.
Yeah. Yes.
Hold on, Mike's having problems with his microphone. You want me to help you over there?
Is that better?
You're fine. You were fine before.
It was drifting down.
Oh, was it?
Kind of ducking down to it, you know. I was getting shorter.
Well, you know, when every time you move it back and forth, it loosens that knuckle up. You got to twist that knuckle. Mike's having problems with the boom for his microphone over there. He's playing around with it.
Okay. I can just picture him drooping down to talk as he goes down to the floor, right?
Now we sit across the table from each other. Pretty soon I'll be looking at the top of Mike's head because he's going to be talking straight down into the microphone.
Yeah.
All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about performance. What to feed your performance horse. Sound good?
Yeah.
Mike, sound good?
Good.
Okay. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He was the 2017 Eventing Championship Farrier. And don't forget, for every podcast we do, we have a matching video. You can see me waving to Mike, Mike waving to me. Mike was having problems with his boom mic over there. He kept drifting down and down and down.
Shorter.
I thought Mike was looking at something in his lap for a little bit. He had his head down while he was talking, but he fixed his microphone. And on the phone with us right now, we also have Dr. Marty Adams, an equine nutritionist. And we're going to talk about performance horses and what to feed them. Now, Dr. Marty Adams, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Now, when I think performance horses, I'm thinking I feed the horses with my wife every morning, and she's got a bag, like a Ziploc bag of food. And the Ziploc bag of food, like, you ever seen a 1 gallon Ziploc bag? Okay, you know, your freezer bags and stuff. If you were to take 3 fingers, that's about as much food as they get, supplements. There's like barley looking nuggets in there. There's a powder that goes in there, all these different things. And I'm like, this horse is like 1,500 pounds. How can this amount of food, twice a day, of course, be enough for this horse? So explain to me, why am I not feeding buckets and buckets like my dog? I have another bulldog, and I feed that. I must fill that bowl up at least 3 times a day. Explain to me, why is there that much or that little of food for my horses? I have 2. I have a mare and a gelding, and they're both dressage horses, and they're only getting maybe a total of 3 cups of actual grain food and supplements. Explain that to me.
Right. That's the paradox of the horse world. So welcome to it. So the smaller horses and the larger horses and some in between tend to be what we call these easy keepers. Okay. So their calorie needs are much less than a normal horse. And in the National Research Council nutrient requirements for horses, back in 2007, when it was last updated, they recognized this for the first time, even though we know in the horse world, and there's been a few research studies showing that certain breeds of horses or types of horses, or even equines like donkeys or mules, require maybe 30 to 40% less calories than other horses. And with the warm blood, sport horses, and things like that who are breeding today, a lot of times, they tend to be easier keepers. So we know it's not a digestive issue, that they don't digest more efficiently. They have a more efficient metabolism, for lack of a better description. And so what we know, though, is they need less energy or calories per day, a lot of these horses. So we don't need to feed them that large quantity of grain, or a lot of these horses are getting sufficient hay or pasture to meet their energy needs. But we do know when we go from no work to heavy work, that the amount of vitamin E, for example, the requirements doubled, because that's an antioxidant that's used up in that performance of that horse. We know that protein is doubled. Protein requirements are doubled. The lysine, which is the first limiting amino acid for horses, meaning that it has to be supplied in the diet because the horse can't make enough with its own body, that amount is doubled or increased, goes from about 20-something grams to 40 grams per day. So what we have to do is we have to concentrate the amino acids, vitamins, and minerals in that horse's diet, typically about a triple rate over a regular feed. And we can accomplish that like your wife does with that bag. We use diet balancers. We use amino acid supplements. We use some vitamin and mineral supplementation in those too. And your wife probably has some specific additives that she's adding too to meet the requirements for that horse.
So you're saying everything is just more concentrated in that small little quote-unquote kibble that they're getting?
Hopefully, yes. If she's following proper equine nutrition, yes. I'd love to see what all she's feeding and see how that meets the needs of the horse. And that's the kind of things I will do. I'll look at a performance horse's diet and make recommendations, or I'll run a ration program with my computer program and see that we're meeting all of those needs, make recommendations. The big thing we want to look for any performance horse or any horse is we want to look at body condition. We scale that on a 1 to 9, and then we look at the top line of the horse, and we can evaluate that horse on the top line or the muscle mass. There's 3 major muscles on the back of that horse, and we'll look at those. And that's where the horse gets the real performance. And as Mike can tell you too, horses need amino acids for their coat, for their hoof health, other various minerals and vitamins too, but we need to make sure that horse is not protein deficient, because all of that will suffer in that case.
So I know I like to have for breakfast, I like to have at least 3 eggs, a good helping of grits. I'm talking big bowl of grits with cheese on top, bacon, sausage, and also a couple pieces of toast. That helps me get going or puts me right back to sleep in the morning. And Mike, what do you normally have for breakfast? A muffin.
No, actually, I've kind of cut back on the muffins and all that kind of stuff drastically over the last couple of years because I was rapidly expanding.
So here I am, a 1,500-pound horse, and you literally come up to me with 2 cups of food. I'm talking hand cups, like your hand. You went into a bag and pulled out 2 hand cups of this grain and put it in their bowl. And if I was a horse looking at that, going, that's not going to be enough for me. But you're saying that is enough for a horse, depending on what the actual balance of the material that's in that cup of food that I'm giving the horse.
Right. What we're doing is we're balancing enough. So that horse is consuming 15 to 25 pounds of hay or pasture per day, right?
Somewhere around, yeah, between the Timothy fescue that we throw out there, the compressed hay that we throw out there, and whatever the pasture grass. We still have pasture grass still. Right. It's a combination of the 2.
Right. We're looking at all of those. We're looking at the nutrient composition of that. Then we look at the performance level of that horse. And then I'm going to look at the body condition. I'm going to look at the top line and say, okay, we need a vitamin supplement, or typically our diet balancers have added vitamins and minerals as well as amino acids. So we want to look at the composition of that. And then we may want to put something else in the diet depending on the lack of that. We know, for example, that hay and pasture tends to be very low in the trace minerals like zinc and copper and manganese. We know that hay tends to be very low in vitamin E. Pasture tends to be pretty high in vitamin E. So if a horse had a lot of pasture availability, looking at vitamin E supplementation, we probably don't need a whole lot of that, depending on the performance level of the horse. So, what I want to do is to fine-tune that horse at its stage of activity to meet those needs and to make it even better. So we know that adding more starch and sugar and fat will increase the stamina level of the horse, right? Reducing the NSC level of the diet as far as the grain will make the horse more trainable or less excitable. Adding more fat typically does that too. It decreases the excitability of the horse. So behaviorally, performance-wise, we can change that horse's personality or performance levels a little bit that way as well.
So here's the question I have. Like I said, everyone out there knows I don't know anything about horses, and I think Dr. Marty Adams is slowly realizing that I don't know anything about horses. Mike thinks, Mike, I don't know what Mike thinks about me.
He's probably realizing it faster than you think.
So, so here's the question that I have. I'm going to go back to something that you said, that a horse eats the hay and the grass and uses it 100% to its capability. I forget what the wording that you said, but it uses it very efficiently. Now, when I first moved up here, I was born and raised in Orlando, Florida. We have horse friends, but all our horses were being boarded. We never had anything on the property till we moved here in North Carolina. Now that we're here in North Carolina, we've met some quote unquote country folk out here and we've gone to a couple like bonfires, like get to know the neighborhood type bonfires. At one of these bonfires, being new to North Carolina, we had a couple country boys out there with us at this bonfire, and they said, they were cattle rustlers. They actually had heads of steer and cattle on their property, and they say, what do you have on your property? We were like, oh, we have, a couple horses and stuff. They literally scoffed and said, oh, the one animal that can eat all day long and not produce anything. And I kind of sat back and I was like going, well, they do produce something or they wouldn't be eating. So when he says that to me, how does that translate to you?
Well, you can take that on a couple different levels. One is, yes, horses are not as efficient at digesting fiber or hay, the pasture, as cows are, right? And what they're talking about the cow is they're producing meat for that person to consume, whereas we don't eat horses. So they're looking at, I think, mainly from the fact that, hey, the horses aren't worth anything because they're not equating value being you're riding the horse, you're showing the horse, you're competing, you're doing that as a part of your hobby or livelihood or whatever, where they're viewing the horse as worthless in that sense compared to a cow who's converting pasture grass to meat or to milk in the case of a dairy cow. So I think they're looking at it that way as opposed to other ways. Horses have been called hay burners in that regard because they are less efficient at digesting fiber than cattle are. But, you know, have you ever ridden a cow? I rode one cow once, and it wasn't all that great of an experience. So if they were, you know, into riding, I think they would change their tune a little bit. We're looking at two different animals with two different functions.
Mike,
right?
you were going to say something?
I think
hold on, Mike was going to say something.
In that regard.
Mike, you were going to say something?
Well, you know, I've just laughing at the riding of the cow. And I've seen videos of people riding bulls and everything else. I prefer cows on the grill.
Well, yeah, and the only time I've tried to ride a cow, it's been one of those bonfire nights, you know what I'm saying, wink, wink, and you look across the field and the cows are just sitting there, and I'm like going, I bet you I could jump on top of that thing. And you kind of sneak up to it, and they kind of turn and look, and they're like going, what's this thing doing that's coming to me? And the closer you get, they literally just stand up, and at a normal gait, I couldn't catch them. They were just walking as fast as, you know, and I was like, I'm top speed. You know, I'm Usain Bolt as much as I can. I could not catch those cows. Those big fat cows are outrunning me.
Probably a good thing you couldn't catch them.
All right, guys, stick around. We got a couple more segments to get into, and we'll let you get back to enjoying the rest of your day. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. We'll be right back. Dr. Marty, you okay?
Yeah, doing good. I actually did. I made a bridle out of a rope on a dairy cow, a really nice, you know, laid back dairy cow one time, and rode her around when I was in grad school, just to see if it could be done. And she was quite nice about it. She didn't try to throw me. She was great, but again, it wasn't a great riding experience.
Do you put a saddle on them or no? Or a blanket or anything?
Just rode bareback. Yeah,
okay.
Just rode bareback. Yeah.
Now we've all
took it in stride.
We've all done crazy things.
Yes.
Yeah. I would not attempt to do what you did out in the field, no matter how many beers I had.
Yeah. It was so funny. They literally just like stood up and looked, and they were like, and they got on all fours, and they literally just like, lump. I mean, they weren't even sweating. They were just moving, and at top speed, I could not catch them. I was like, God almighty.
Well, they did you a favor, because if you had caught them, that would have ended badly.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. And
All right.
not for the cow.
Not for the cow. It would have been for me. All right, here we go. I hate this. Mike's got me. I say Mike's got me. I have to name all of the certifications and stuff that Mike has, Dr. Marty. And this last one he just achieved, it's like a mouthful. It's licensed thoroughbred farrier through the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission. You need to figure out a way to shorten that or something.
Yeah.
But I mean, it explains exactly what it is, and I always mess it up.
Yeah.
Mike goes, close enough. Keep going.
Yeah. Good luck with it.
All right, here we go. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He is a licensed thoroughbred farrier through the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission. I did it, Mike. I did it that time.
Oh, God, you got it.
And don't forget to follow us on YouTube. Just search Equine Dynamics Mike Stine. And I've seen your memberships. Your subscriptions are going up and up and up. You're doing great over there.
Wow.
Your videos are getting a lot of pull, a lot of traction. So make sure you like and subscribe over there as well. And I guess we're going to start videotaping here soon. Some of your classes and some of the techniques.
That is a plan. We'll see what happens.
All right, so hopefully we can get some of that in there and give you guys something else to look at as well. And we'd love to hear from you as well. And the way you do that is go to equinedynamics.com. At the top of the page says contact us. If you have any questions for us here in the studios, fill out that little form there, put podcast in the subject line, and make sure you put a return address, and we'll send you out some magnets, some stickers and stuff, just to say thank you for sharing and being part of the show as well. And being a part of the show right now as well, on the phone with us right now, we have Dr. Marty Adams, an Equine Nutritionist. How are you, Dr. Marty?
I'm doing well, thank you.
You don't mind if I call you Dr. Marty for short, do you?
Not at all.
Okay.
I've been cold work.
So we're going to continue on. You touched a little bit earlier in the last segment about what are amino acid supplements and when to consider giving them to your horse. So explain, dive into that a little bit more for our listeners.
Sure. So we know as we increase the workload of the horse or the activity level of the horse, we want to take them to the next level, upper level dressage, make them go faster, jump higher, and so on. There's amino acid needs, and we know that those are increased with horses that need more activity. So like I said before, lysine requirements double, protein requirements double. We know that there are certain essential amino acids for horses. We know that lysine is the first one. So lysine, threonine, methionine. We've actually done some research to include a fourth one called tryptophan. Will provide more muscle mass in the horse.
Now, hold on.
Go ahead.
We were told all our lives that after turkey dinner, after Thanksgiving dinner, what's the thing that puts you to sleep? And everyone says tryptophan. So you're telling me that tryptophan in horses works the opposite way?
It does. There's been a couple of peer-reviewed studies with tryptophan in horses. It does not cause drowsiness or less excitability in horses. Even the research in humans is very, I guess, contradictory. Some studies show it does and some doesn't. The issue is probably when you eat that big meal, the blood flow is diverted to your stomach region to digest that food, and probably the lack of blood flow.
Yeah, it drains your whole body, yeah.
Yeah, so you're just kind of so sluggish. It's probably that more than the tryptophan is, but the research is pretty clear in horses that it doesn't do that. We have found that you'll see in some of our feeds that we actually have a tryptophan guarantee. It is not a prohibited substance. FEI does not prohibit that substance. It's not been shown to have any bad effects or anything like that.
Now you said the FBI, like the Federal Bureau of Investigation, would ban that?
No.
FEI.
Oh, I'm sorry.
FEI.
I'm thinking, why does our government care about if we have tryptophan?
Right. Let's hope they don't, for sure.
So
FEI,
FEI.
yeah. Federation Equestrian International.
There you go.
Is for that, yeah. So the idea would be that we need additional amino acid supplementation for those horses like we talked about before that are easy keepers. With a regular, grain or concentrate that we feed horses on a daily basis, the minimum is typically 0.5% of body weight per day. So a 1,200-pound horse would get 6 pounds. Like you talked about your wife's horses, they probably get just a couple of pounds a day because they're such easy keepers. So we need to concentrate those amino acids. So we'll use diet balancers, which tend to run 30% protein. I know Mike's very familiar with Hoof supplements. In those Hoof supplements, you'll see a large amount of methionine, which is another what we consider an essential amino acid for horses, even though the research shows only lysine, we have good research as far as university research it's been done. We've done research to show that we have a 4 amino acid proprietary blend that we use, and then we'll have other amino acid supplements that are known as the branch chain amino acids. This is leucine, leucine, isoleucine, and valine. So those are branch chain amino acids that can increase muscle development or protein synthesis in horses that we give them on a daily basis that are working. You've heard of milkshaking, or I'm trying to think of the product for humans. So humans will work out, and then they'll take whey protein shakes like an hour after they work out.
Right.
That'll increase their muscle mass. Those same amino acids we use for horses in what we call our top line supplements, like Top Line Extreme, for example, is a product that we have. Like I was saying, with horses that have poor hoof condition, those diet balancers, those amino acid supplements will work. But also hoof supplements are high in methionine, which is an amino acid that contains a lot of sulfur in the hoof tissue. That's very important. Sulfur-containing amino acids are in a high amount. So for building more hoof wall, methionine is another amino acid supplement that we provide the horse. So we'll look at that horse, and we'll do a top-line evaluation. We actually score that horse from an A to a D on top line, and we'll provide additional diet balancers and amino acid supplements for that to build more muscle mass, so we increase the physical ability of that horse to perform.
So here's my question. You talked about a performance horse gets about 6 pounds of food per day, and you said my horses are easy care horses. Now, I have a 4-year-old gelding and a 11-year-old mare, and the mare gets ridden twice a week. The gelding gets ridden 3 times a week. Would you still consider those easy care horses?
Yeah, so we would look at activity levels of horses. We actually have 4 levels. We go from maintenance, to light work, moderate work, heavy work, very heavy work, okay? So we'd look at that activity level of the horse, and we would base the grain feeding rates on that. So like I said, the minimum on a regular typical grain is a minimum of 0.5% of body weight of that grain per day. So that would be for a 1,200-pound horse, would be 6 pounds a day.
Okay.
But you've got these easy keeper type horses where they'd probably never get 6 pounds of grain a day unless they were in really heavy work, or they were, they were pregnant or having, lactating or things like this. So in that case, then, and that's the problem with the horse world. We make these feeds, and we have certain recommendations for the average horse. We have so many horses that are not meeting those needs because we're feeding more hay or more pasture, or that horse metabolically is more efficient. And so in that case, what we want to do is we want to provide a more concentrated diet with the use of amino acid supplements and diet balancers, so we can meet those needs, not calorie-wise. Calorie-wise needs are met if the body condition is good. We want to dial that back and make sure coat condition's good, hoof condition's good, top line is good, and so on, okay? So then we'll use that, like your wife is doing, those supplements, diet balancers, top line supplements, to provide the maximum confirmation for that horse as far as musculature, hoof condition, and so on.
Now, you mentioned something about having a pregnant horse. Now, my wife and I, the mare, we are considering because of, Mike, what is the problems that the mare is having? I know she's gotten to a certain level without any more, I don't want to say damage or anything, because it's not damage.
There's some problems going up in her neck, up around her scapula. And that's preventing her, limits her ability in the show ring. And we've also got some problems down in the lower limb where we've got some palmar angle alignment problems we are working with mechanically.
So, I'm sorry. Did you have more?
No, that's basically it.
Okay. So my wife, Dr. Marty, is thinking about turning her into a brood mare. What step within the next year should she start now on changing her regimen? Now, like I said, she gets ridden twice a week, and when I say ridden, a half-hour dressage class is basically what she's doing, and maybe once a week on a lunge line, and that's about it. Should I start changing her diet? I know we're talking about amino acids and everything. Should we start changing her intake now if we're going to prepare her in the next year, in the next 12 months, to have or to consider her to be a brood mare?
Yeah, probably not. I mean, I would want to see what her diet is now, especially if she's not feeding a typical commercial diet balancer like we would have in our, we have a couple of diet balancers in a couple of our feed lines. I would want to look at that diet. Typically for the first 8 months or so of pregnancy, that horse only has maintenance requirements. If we're meeting those maintenance requirements, we're okay. It's only in that last trimester then where that fetal growth is occurring that we really need to look at increased levels of protein, minerals, vitamins for that horse. So probably not in that case, but I would want to make sure that we did have an adequate diet for that horse at that point. So like I said, for the regular feeds that we're feeding, typically those recommendations are 0.5% of body weight per day for that concentrate. For our diet balancers, the recommendation is much less than that. It's only 0.1%. So basically 1 pound of a diet balancer per 1,000 pounds of body weight. So I would want to see that your wife's horses are probably more close to that type of situation where they'll need 1 pound or 2 of a diet balancer per day, and then maybe a few other supplements like joint supplements and so on that would be recommended for that particular horse. But that's what I'd want to look at, first, is see if we had it on something like that, we could take that horse through at least the first, couple of trimesters of pregnancy, likely on that diet balancer alone, and then we can increase the diet balancer or go to the diet balancer and some feed during the latter part of that pregnancy period. And then again, these horses tend to be such easy keepers a lot of the times. We could go to probably a fairly low amount of grain or diet balancer combination during lactation as well.
All right, go ahead, Mike.
I'll tell you something I would like to see a lot more of. It's just like, us stepping on a set of scales with the weight tapes. I rarely, if ever, see a weight tape hanging up in a barn, and it's not like this is an expensive item. And
yeah, it looks like what a cloth tape when you're doing like you're making a suit or something. Isn't it like a cloth or a long tape like that? Yeah.
But you know, even if they don't remember, if they would just draw a line and put that horse's initials on where a good weight was and monitor that from time to time, we could head off some of these issues. And it's cheap and quick.
Yep, for sure.
So,
yep.
Dr. Marty,
we provide weight tapes as well.
So, Dr. Marty, you're just between me and you and Mike, just the three of us sitting here, right? This is between the three of us.
And nobody's listening.
Nobody's listening. It's just between the three of us. So this is not an argument. This is a discussion. It's always a discussion when we talk about horses. It's not an argument. There's a discussion, this brood mare that we're going to have, all right? So she's in a pasture all by herself. She's got about 1.5 acres by herself. My wife says, and what's out there is just, Heinz 57 grass, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. My wife says we have to kill all that grass out there because there's some Timothy out there because we've seeded it before, that the horse, when it gets pregnant, is not allowed to have any of that Timothy grass. I got to plant Bermuda grass or Bahia grass out there now.
They're probably talking more about the fescues.
Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. The fescue. Yes, Mike, you are. Thank you. That's why I said just the three of us are here, and it's a discussion. So my wife says I'm not allowed to have any fescue in that pasture. Is that correct? And if it is correct, tell me why. For starting a brood mare, I guess is where I'm going with that.
Yeah, the issue with fescue is that it contains an endophyte that has a toxin in it that can cause problems when that horse tries to deliver the baby. It'll reduce lactation or milk production of the mare. It can lead to a condition called red bag, which can be fatal to the horse. It can result in a weakened foal and so on. So the recommendation would be, and it's not that you would have to eliminate all the fescue. The simple way to do that is just to remove the horse from the pasture 2 to 3 months before the horse foals. So there are other ways you could do that. Certainly the safest would be to remove the fescue from the pasture or go to an endophyte-free fescue or a modified endophyte fescue. There's all kinds of possibilities for that. If there is fescue in the pasture, you can replace it with one that's safe. But another recommendation is to do that. And then there's a drug that you can get from your veterinarian that they can prescribe to provide to that mare that's suspected of being on fescue or that the mammary glands haven't developed properly or milk hasn't been let down. There's a drug called domperidone that the veterinarian can prescribe that will work. But it's better to prevent it, to pull the horse off the pasture or have a fescue-free pasture for sure.
Dr. Marty, you're not helping me. Well, I'm sure you're helping our whole entire audience from here to Belgium to Singapore and stuff, but you're not helping me.
Well, there are also some tie-ins between the fescue grasses and dealing with laminitic issues. So that's another reason to monitor what your horses are eating.
See, I'm lazy. I didn't want to have to till up that whole pasture and drag everything out. That's why I was like, oh, now I got to put new grass out there. I just put it back there last season. And
if you never ever look at a horse until you've got a huge problem, it's not a problem until you know about it.
Yeah, I know, Mike. I know. From your mouth to my wife's ears, I know.
We know who's going to win this argument, don't we?
I know. I'm just like I said, I'm just the checkbook on one side. All right, guys, stick around. We got one more little segment, and we'll let you get back to enjoying the rest of your day. You listen to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He'll be right back. You doing okay, Dr. Marty?
Oh, yeah.
Mike, you doing okay over there?
I'm doing okay.
Is your coffee kicking in or kicking out?
It's going to kick out here in a little bit.
Yeah. Be nice if it kept all day long, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yep. You just borrow it.
There we go. Mike, you ready?
Got it.
Dr. Marty, you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine, the best podcast to create sounder horses from the ground up. Mike Stine is a journeyman farrier with an APF1 accreditation. And over to my far hand side is Mike Stine. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Make sure you follow him on Facebook. The way you do that is search for Equine Dynamics Mike Stine, and also on YouTube for every podcast we have a matching video as well. Me waving Mike waving me again. And make sure you like, subscribe, and get your questions in as well. Go to equinedynamics.com, fill out the little form at the top of the page, says contact us, and put podcast in the question or in the subject line and your question down below and put a return address, and we'll send you out some magnets, some stickers. Mike's got some brand new keychains over there that just came in. Maybe he'll send those out to you as well. And on the phone with us right now also is Dr. Marty Adams, an equine nutritionist. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
All right, so what did we learn today, everybody? Recognizing and managing metabolic conditions. Dr. Marty?
So the two major metabolic conditions we talked about, one was equine metabolic syndrome, so meaning if your horse is diagnosed with insulin resistance or dysregulation. The other one is going to be Cushing's disease. For both of these, one of the major symptoms is laminitis. Nutritionally, we can handle this by providing a low NSC or non-structural carbohydrate diet. That would be a low sugar starch feed and a low sugar starch hay. Limiting pasture, which tends to be higher in pasture and in sugars and starches during the spring and fall, especially if it's a cool season grass. The other is to manage the diet of the horse to reduce calories if the horse is overweight. That increases the risk of laminitis in both of those situations too.
And feeding horses for performance on any level.
So performance, the idea would be, especially for easy keepers, to provide enough amino acids, enough vitamins and minerals. In many horses that we don't feed a regular feed to the recommended minimal amount, which is typically 5 to 6 pounds of grain per day. So going with a diet balancer, a top line supplement, those kinds of products to make sure that we meet those increased amino acid needs and mineral needs and vitamin needs for that performance horse, maintaining good body condition, which is important, and maintaining good top line or muscle development along the back of the horse.
And what are amino acid supplements? You touched on that a little bit. And when to consider giving them to your horse?
So amino acid supplements, we have amino acids in the feed and the diet balancers. The idea would be feeding enough of those to maintain a good top line or muscle development along the top of the horse. As performance increases, typically energy requirements are going to increase, but a lot of these easy keeper type horses, we don't need to increase the calories much. We do need to increase those. So look at the regular amino acid supplements we have in diet balancers that would have things or amino acids like lysine, threonine, and methionine. And then for increased performance needs with those horses really at that high end of performance, I'll go with a top line supplement. That'll include the branch chain amino acids where we're talking about leucine, valine, and isoleucine for increased muscle development and muscle recovery.
And nowhere in his conversation he says I got to buy one of those water horse treadmills. So I'm
yes,
off.
You do.
No,
yes,
I don't. No, I don't. Maybe for me, but not for my horses. We'd like to thank each and every one of you for listening to us, downloading us. Like I said, go over to equinedynamics.com. Get your questions in. Make sure you like Mike Stine over on Facebook as well. That's Equine Dynamics on Facebook. And also make sure you like and subscribe to his YouTube channel as well. On behalf of Dr. Marty Adams on the phone with us, an equine nutritionist, where can people find you? You have a Facebook page? Do you have a YouTube page or anything like that where people, if they want to find out more information on their metabolic health of their horse, where can they find you?
Yes, you can. Well, you can reach. I do have a Facebook page. It's not a professional page, but I take questions through that. The main way to reach me would be to my email address is Marty MARTY _ ADAMS at Cargill CARGILL.com. And I'm also the field nutritionist. If you call or consider a top-line supplement or other supplements for horses, Progressive Nutrition, which is prognutrition.com. Any technical questions that come over that for our products are directed to me as well.
Awesome. We'd like to thank you for joining the show. And on behalf of Mike Stine over there,
have a good day.
My name is Travis Holmes saying see you next week. And we're out.
Good deal.
Marty, you there?
Yes, I am. I am. Yeah, I'm still awake.
Awesome.
No, I really appreciate it, Travis. Great. I thought it was great. I love the enthusiasm in your voice, and I think you did a great job. And Mike, I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, it's just tickled to death too. I wish some of that information I could get a lot more of my clients to pay attention to.
Well, you know how to do that now? Show them the podcast. Take them this and say, look, you want to know about more? Listen to Dr. Marty on this episode and so on, and maybe it'll go on from there. Dr. Marty, I thought you did a great job. Do you have any questions or answers or comments for me? outside of the.
I don't. I appreciate it too. And Mike, as you know, anytime you have any questions about that kind of stuff, I'll be glad just to provide you with that.
I will do that. Usually what I would do to people is, you need to talk to Dr. Marty.
Yeah. Well, and I'll do the same with a farrier or a vet too. And I've done that for you too. So yeah, you're right. And I tell horse people, I say there's so many things that the horse person has to know, right? And what they want to know is, I want to know how to ride my horse better. Well, all this other stuff goes into that, right?
Exactly.
So it can really be, tough, especially Travis, you're trying to sort through stuff that your wife is, demanding, I should say, or wanting, and your head is swimming with all this stuff too.
I've been swimming for the last 15 years that we've been together. I've been around horses before, so this is nothing new. It's kind of, for me to talk about radio stuff, because I live and breathe by this stuff. It's boring to her. For me to sit up here and edit and listen to the same segment, the same 5 seconds 10 times over and over and over, I don't mind doing that. It's the same thing as me watching her go around in the circle on a horse. I mean, I know what I'm looking at, but how many times can I watch it go around?
You're looking at money go out the window.
Right. So